a crisis of belonging. She writes, "We've sorted ourselves into factions based on our politics and ideology. We've turned away from one another towards blame and rage. We're lonely and untethered. We're scared. So damn scared." Well, we don't think straight when we're scared. Effective strategies of healing don't come to us quickly when we're terrified. Brown says, quote, "The world feels heartbroken to me right now." And our lack of connection is affecting our health. In fact, medical experts agree that feeling connected boosts our immunities and our overall health. Dr. Kenneth Pelletier of the Stanford Center for Research and Disease Prevention says, "There appears to be a basic human need, as basic as food and shelter. In fact, social support may be one of the most critical elements in distinguishing those who remain healthy from those who become ill." And there are truckloads of studies showing that social support can ward off debilitating diseases as much as tuberculosis, depression, alcoholism, psychiatric illness. Well, as the ethical culture leader here, I care about your health. I want you to feel connected to this place. I want you to feel connected to each other. And through this place, connected to the rest of the world. I want for you to feel that you belong. So I'm going to look at the first step of belonging, which is being welcomed. I want to thank all of those who serve as hosts here for our Sunday morning programs, and particularly the organizer of those hosts, the seemingly tireless and selfless John Marshall, who I warned I was going to speak about. This week, John and I talked about our hosting and how we welcome people to our shared space. And the first thing you must do as a host is you have to prepare the place, like you get your house ready for a gathering. So they have to put out the sign-in book, the pens, the name tags, the newsletters, the handouts, the songbooks, the vase, the flowers, water for the speaker. They ready the collection plates. They open the book cabinet. They pass the mic during our sharing. They pass the collection plates. They collect the money. They make sure the money gets to our administrator. And afterwards they make themselves available for questions or conversation with our newcomers, and they do that all with a smile. And that's not easy, although John told me actually he thought it was easy. But a smile is probably the most important thing, because in the words of activist Max Eastman, a smile is a universal welcome. And that's really true. But it's hard to smile unless you feel it inside. Fake smiles don't seem to work well. So you have to be centered. The word welcome comes from a Middle English word meaning one whose coming is pleasant, a welcome person or thing, a guest. So the moment somebody walks in that door, we want them to experience the sense that their coming here is a joy to us. And we can always do better. You can read 100 different books about best practices for small congregations on welcoming. One thing we did a couple of years ago was put better signs up for the bathrooms. Seems like a silly thing. But the last thing you want a guest to have to do is to come in here and have their first conversation be, where can I be? So you have to look through the eyes of newcomers and visitors as to what it's like to come into this space. So we have to be careful about the language that we use. Let's avoid in-speak. I know I use too many acronyms and phrases that if you're not a member of the community, you may not know. The Washington Ethical Society, in fact, produced a handout that they have stacked at their entrance, and it's entitled, "What Are They Talking About?" Being an alternative to traditional religion, especially a 140-year-old one, we have our alternative language. The West handout explains, while you are welcome to use any language you feel is right for you, we thought it might be helpful to have a cheat sheet, a glossary of terms that we frequently use. So I'd like to make one for the fall for this building, where we say that our platforms are what many people might call our morning programs, and our sermons, we don't use that term, are our platform addresses. And instead of congregation, we talk about our society, and that my role is similar to a minister or a pastor, but we call it leader or clergy leader. We might say that we're part of the AEU, but explain that that means the American Ethical Union, which is our federating organization. We might explain that ethical culture and ethical humanism are actually the same thing, but we use two different terms to say it. We might want to explain that ethical humanism is about trying to do the things that we believe humans are responsible for doing, making the world a better place. And we might want to explain that reason and evidence are the best guide for us in doing that work. We might want to say that we are humanists, which means we don't embrace supernaturalism. We might want to say organizationally we are non-theists, which means we don't take a position on whether God exists or not, and that we welcome people of all faiths into this building. And we might want to explain that we try to teach that to our children in our SEEK program, and that SEEK stands for Sunday Ethical Education for Kids. But obviously no paper is going to do what human contact does. And it's not that our hosts are the only hosts every Sunday morning. We all have to be hosts in our collective home. Each of us have to help create an inclusive, respectful environment, welcoming people from all backgrounds, from all life experiences. So start with the basics. Introduce yourself. Ask how they heard about us. Brief conversation, perhaps. Introduce them to other members. Include them in conversations, especially in coffee hour. And we usually do that, but I think it's important to be mindful of that all of the time. And we should make sure that our welcome extends beyond our Sunday morning. So let's make sure that visitors can ask follow-up questions. Give them an email address, maybe yours, or mine, or Bob's as president of the society, so that they can follow up with a phone call or an email. Encourage them to look more at our website, or look at our Facebook postings, or our meetup events that go online. Make sure they sign up for the newsletter, as we say every Sunday, to find out what we're up to online. And invite them to an upcoming event. Like if you're new today, come back Tuesday night when Jeffrey Rosen is here, and I'll be interviewing about his biography about my great-grandfather, which is kind of interesting. So what are the other things that we could do to be more welcoming? I want you to just take a moment and take a deep breath and think of one thing that you might do. It could be serious or it could be fanciful. What might we do to be more welcoming for people who walk into our building the first time? Just take a moment. As you're thinking, I'm going to ask our hosts and Bob to pass out some cards and pens. What could we do, fanciful or serious? And then think about one thing we should stop doing, or one thing we shouldn't do that we haven't done yet. What might be a turn-off for somebody coming into our building? Take a moment to think about that. And please scratch down on a note card. On one side, put what we should do, and write should do at the top. And on the bottom, don't do. On the flip side, turn it over and write don't do. And just take a moment to think of that. I'm going to play some light guitar in the background for about 2 minutes. What could we do more of? What should we not do? Feel free to add to that card over the course of the program. I'd like you now to do something else that we don't do often. If you prefer to sit and greet people that come to you, great. But if you wouldn't mind standing up and go tell one person you don't know real well one of the things you put on your card. Take another 2 or 3 minutes to say hi to somebody. Get up, wander around if you'd like to. Find somebody you don't know well. If that's possible. What'd you write down? Finish your conversation. Thank you. So if you haven't handed in those cards, you can give them to me or Bob afterwards. So here are some of the things that I thought that there are a number of things that I thought of about what we should do. I'll just give you a couple of these before we dive back into the rest of my talk. We should not ignore our visitors, but we shouldn't crowd them. We should offer them an opportunity to talk, but should they seem like they just want to observe, of course that's fine to do. So we have to be good at reading their cues. You can avoid assuming their personal pronouns, something I still do too often, so call them by their name, and should you feel comfortable and should the conversation get there, you can ask them what their preferred pronoun is, whether that might be he or she or they or z or something else. Don't assume that they want to join, don't assume that they do or don't believe in a God. And avoid topics that might be painful or intrusive. For example, one of the things that, coming from Washington, we do too often down there is we ask them, so what do you do? What do you do? That's uncomfortable in a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons is that more and more our friends and our neighbors and our fellow citizens in an economic slump, that's a challenging question to be asked in a new community. So let's be more aware of the sorts of things that will make people feel more comfortable. And next year I want to actually do some discussion time with the host to talk about potential ways that we can make our guests feel more comfortable. Hopefully the little meet and greet that occurred here, it certainly stirs up new energy, but I hope it's either a new relationship or maybe it's a new chapter relationship. So I challenge everybody in the room to get to know people you don't know as well. People that you see and you recognize, but I've never really talked to that person. The organization we have here tries to support relationships. It's why I tried to start a buddy system with new members to match them with a member who already is here so you can know a little bit more about our traditions and our history and get to know the members better. It's why we offer an introduction to ethical humanism the first Sunday of every month so people can get to know us in an informal situation. It's why we have a connections committee, which works to try to link people with members who can't show up here. Either they're ill or they're far away. It's why we have a joys and concern at the beginning of our program so that we can share our joys and concerns more deeply. In fact, all of the things we do here really should be seen as ways to get to know people, ways to build relationships. Our committees should be that as well. That's one reason why at the beginning of most committee meetings we have a go-around where people can say a moment how they're feeling at that moment, what their day's been like, what their week's been like, to try to connect in that way. So you have to be intentional about nurturing relationships. It doesn't come naturally. Maybe for some it does, but for most people it does not. There are a lot of stumbling blocks. We need to create safe spaces here so that conversations can occur and that all voices are heard. And you have to test for consensus. You have to double check. I think I heard you say this. Is this the agreement we've come to? Encouraging us to do that while we try to get things done, while we try to heal a broken world is not easy. But task and process have to be hand in hand in order for us to be what we are as an ethical society. And that's an art, to balance an inclusive community while doing the challenging social justice work we try to do. And that was made clear to me when Unitarian Universalist minister spoke with me about how to help small congregations get healthier. And he said one of the biggest things we have to do is strike a balance between being opening and welcoming and doing the work we do in the world as our mission tells us to. Being part of a community is wonderful, but if it's the only thing that's emphasized, then a community can become myopically focused only on relationships within the organization. It can emphasize too greatly the traditions and our language, known only by those of us on the team. It can create a divide between us and the rest of the world. And this can kill a congregation. In order to be healthy and to flourish, the boundaries of our community have to be somewhat porous, allowing new and different people from many backgrounds and many identities to feel welcome here. It's like the walls of a biological cell that have to be porous enough to allow water and nutrients to flow in and out. That's what makes an organism flourish, and that's what makes a congregation flourish. Now, sometimes having a porous boundary can feel threatening because new ideas and new ways of doing things come in. People fear change. Our comforting, familiar traditions can feel at risk. And that's why one of the things that Stephen Johnson told me is you have to be clear about your mission. You have to be clear about your mission. You can be open to greater diversity if you're clearer about why we are here and the work we need to do in the world. Belonging is not just about warm welcomes and strong relationships. It's also about shared values and shared work. Ethical societies value the inherent worth of every human being. And that has to be evident not only in our relationships with each other in this room, but with our relationships with the outside world, people we don't know. An important balance has to be struck between honoring worth and creating a welcome, where people feel they belong. Now, the devil's in the details, right? Because we can agree on our phrases about the inherent worth of every person, the importance of social justice, the importance of ethical relationships. But when you actually try to live those, that's when things get complicated. And we have to do the work to manage our disagreements here with grace, with dignity. I'm always impressed at our members when they say where they stand and they will cite their disagreements, but they do it in a way where they're not being disagreeable. They care about the relationship as much as they care about the issue. I'm trying to do that myself. It's a battle every day. Brene Brown suggests that we will feel less alone, especially when we connect with people we disagree with. That doesn't mean that you get together with people you disagree with and immediately start talking about what we disagree with. If you listen to Krista Tippett this morning, a fascinating story about an Orthodox Jew and a white supremacist who got to know each other in college, and 2 years after their friendship, believe it or not, they had a friendship. The white supremacist left his white supremacy group. But it took 2 years of a friendship woven together with small talk, sharing ideas about religion, and so on. And that's not easy to do. You need to get to know the whole person. We need to get to know each other's dreams and hopes and fears. And that helped because Brene Brown says, quote, "People are hard to hate close up." We may be challenged sometimes, but it's really true. Things get complicated when you get to know people. This helps, according to Brown, because it's a gift to ourselves to be able to weave a friendship and not have this negative energy be the main thing that determines our relationship with each other in the outside world. There's a lot that gets in the way of relationships. People make assertions without really having any facts, or they just repeat things because they heard them on the internet or because their tribe says it, so they repeat it. And when we feel like we've waded into what Brene Brown actually calls a technical term, bullshit, she says we should stay calmly engaged. Her research indicates that people who have a sense of their own belonging are better able to do that. When you are grounded, you can deal with the friction in relationships better. She says the people who belong handle it well. They don't stay silent in these situations, but they don't attack either. They ask for clarification of evidence. They listen. They're respectful. End quote. So when difficult topics come up in conversation, she recommends not just agreeing to disagree and then walking away, but to maybe hitting the pause button for a minute and to nurture the relationship with other things or other areas that you agree. So when your inner triggers are hit, when you feel that fight or flight response, try to control your inner world. Take a deep breath. Instead of launching a counterattack or running away, take a deep breath and say, "Tell me more." Might surprise you. Explore different life experiences and lessons that help explain why the 2 people or 4 people of the group has different opinions. It builds a sense of belonging that is deeper and richer than you could ever imagine. It hurts when good people who care about the world, who want to try to make the world better, who want to live closer to their ideals, get tangled up in miscommunication and hurt feelings. It hurts to see strategic differences turn into personal disagreements. In other words, it hurts to be a human. According to Brown, communities that share collectively and in a healthy manner their joy and their pain are the strongest communities. Part of the strength of our format as a congregation is that we meet here weekly and sometimes more, face to face, not on the internet, to share the joy of ideas and friendships and music, along with our struggles and our pains. Brown says the more we're willing to seek out moments of collective joy and show up for experiences of collective pain, for real, not online, the more difficult it becomes to deny our human connection even with people we disagree with. So our little alternative to traditional religion can offer what sociologist Emil Durkheim observed in religious ceremonies, a sense of shared connection or spirituality, what Durkheim labels collective effervescence. Collective effervescence. And such effervescence can inspire us to stick together through thick or thin when the world seems cruel or our community seems conflicted. I try to develop, and I encourage us all to develop, both personally and organizationally, what Zen Buddhist Joan Halifax called a strong back and a soft front. A strong back and a soft front. And if we understand our beliefs, we may be able to be more compassionate and vulnerable when confronting people from other groups with whom we disagree. And that reveals another great paradox about psychology. The fact that the best kind of belonging cultivates the strength to stand alone. Let me repeat that. The best kind of belonging is the kind that cultivates the strength to stand alone, even in your own group or your own family. Without a firm sense of community, without roots, without have 2 feet on the ground, it's hard to speak out. Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, taps a deep source of strength for me, and that's the awareness that belonging to groups helps me be more as an individual. She writes, true belonging only happens when we present our authentic self to the world, our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. Know yourself. Love yourself. And then share yourself. When you're welcome to the Ethical Society, you're welcomed both as you are, as a unique individual, and as you can become as a member of this organization. When you sacrifice your time and your talent and your treasure for our collective effort to try to heal a broken world and build a warm community, those sacrifices can strengthen you as an individual. A few years ago, I gave a talk here where I mentioned 3 types of relationships you might have in an organization. I'm curious which one of these you feel most connects you to the Ethical Society. Some of you might talk about your relationship with us as an identity relationship, that you are an ethical humanist, that you're on this team, that it's part of who you are. Identity relationship. Another type is a consumer relationship. You might not identify personally as an ethical humanist, but you like what we produce here, our products, our Sunday morning programs, our music, our evening classes, and you consume those, and that's important to you. But I think the most potentially rewarding experience is a cooperative relationship. Our organization, our relationships, our work only exist because we come together cooperatively to share responsibility to act ethically in the world and with each other. My wife taught me a good lesson on childbearing a few years ago, more than a few. My youngest son graduated from college yesterday. There's a bittersweet reality about that. But I used to do too much for my children. I used to give them fish rather than teaching them to fish. And my wife helped me understand that that really can harm a child. Parents that don't teach their children to do chores or to be responsible for the collective really often end up being spoiled, selfish children who are disappointed because the world is not constantly catering to their whims. And I understood this when my children might say, when I would bug them about picking up after they made their lunch or do their own laundry or something, they'd say, but this is my home, I want to relax here. I belong here. And my wife taught me this response. Yes, you do belong here. You will always belong here. This is your home. And this is your broom. And this is your sponge. And the basement is your washing and drying machine. You do belong here. It wasn't a home, it was their home. This is not a ethical society, it's your ethical society. So I'm traveling much this summer. I'm also going to spend some time trying to do more writing about speaking of and representing ethical humanism to the world. And I appreciate that. I'm deeply grateful to both Leader Emeritus Richard Canary and Christian Hayden, who will be carrying on some of the duties I usually do. I'm deeply grateful to Bob and the board, who will be carrying on stewardship here, having a planning retreat this summer. And I'm thankful to all the committee members that keep up the work. Our education committee churns through the summer with a platform every Sunday. This summer, at least. And I'm thankful for the administrator, Cheryl, that we have here, and for Greg, who looks after our building and our renters. But they can't do it by themselves. John Marshall needs your help as a host. I'm suggesting we go from 2 to 3 hosts next year. So he needs help in welcoming others officially and formally and getting this set up. Harry could use you in helping set up and collect the food. And everybody that does that every week, thank you so much. I can't thank everybody that does everything. Nick could use more people on the Ethical Action Committee because Power is seeking our help and our support in their work making our community better. And I have to do a better job of explaining how to connect with those committees and that work and encouraging us all to get more deeply, more meaningfully involved, so that you can contribute and you can grow, not just as an individual, not just as a member of this community, but as both. There's a handout that I'm asking the host to give when you leave that just has a little overview of some of the committees and some of the areas of work that we could have. And I'm hoping to update that for September and have it more formal and official. Because your ethical society needs you. It needs you to speak in ways and feel that you belong, so that it's not the Board of Trustees, but your Board of Trustees. Not that it's the Ethical Education Committee, but your Education Committee, your music team, your building committee, your finance committee, your communication committee, your camp building committee, and more. You get the point. We need a community in which belonging is not just about wearing team colors or consuming what we produce. We need a community where everyone belongs in a way that they are maintaining this community while we try to repair a wounded world. I hope that we can continue to grow. I hope that we can make the words of our closing song ring as true as we've ever seen. We are one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one, we pledge ourselves to greater service, and with love and justice strive to make